Hail and well-met adventurers, I am your host, the Dungeon Master, and I bid thee welcome to this brand new Let's Play of 2019. Gather around as I embark upon this Let's Play adventure of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, released 10 years ago by Arc System Works and published and distributed by Axis Games. Now, at its core, BlazBlue Calamity Trigger is a 2D anime-style arcade fighting game, very reminiscent of classic titles such as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. However, there are a number of significant differences that separate BlazBlue from its predecessors, and I'll be exploring those differences throughout the course of this Let's Play. Another thing to note is that, well, this game, I think it was originally released for the arcade. I'm not entirely sure on that. But BlazBlue Calamity Trigger's main strength lies within its console versions, specifically the PS3 and PS4, as well as the Xbox and Xbox 360. No, the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, forgive me. I was getting my Xboxes confused. The version I'm playing, obviously, if you can't tell from the keyboard icon on the main menu, as well as the lower right-hand corner of the screen, is in fact the PC port of Calamity Trigger. There is another port for the PlayStation Portable, which is probably one of the most infamous ports of Calamity Trigger. Although I was considering doing that, just in case the PC version didn't work. Now I'm playing the GOG version as opposed to the Steam version because the Steam version doesn't work. But, and of course, something else that I meant to mention, of course, is the fact that the PC port does have a number of problems. First and foremost, it is notorious for having slight frame dropping, which means that there is a bit of slowdown, and that slowdown is made much more apparent thanks, of course, to my handy-dandy trusty recording software that is Bandicam. But in spite of that, Calamity Trigger is still playable, albeit at a slower pace than it ought to be. But there is a silver lining to this, because I have a new controller, a PC PS3 controller, because I refuse to play using the keyboard or with an Xbox controller. And demonstrating, as such, that's not me pressing the keyboard, but the controller in question, which makes this a hell of a lot easier for me. Now, there are a few modes that one can play on Calamity Trigger. There is the arcade mode, which is a quintessential staple of any arcade fighting game ever invented, from Mortal Kombat to Street Fighter to Tekken and so on and so forth. I will be showcasing arcade mode in the near future, but not right now. Another mode is, of course, the PvP or versus mode, where you can fight against somebody else or against the computer in a one-on-one battle. Another thing to note about the PC port is that there is no online version or online mode of Calamity Trigger. But seeing as how I don't intend to use online mode anyway, that doesn't matter in the slightest. But the mode that I'm going to be diving into is the story mode, which explores the universe of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger in quite elaborate detail. And believe it or not, BlazBlue Calamity Trigger does have an extensive backstory and lore to it, something that separates it from other traditional fighting games. But this is what I'm going to be doing, diving right into the story of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger. So I shall be doing that. Now, we've already seen the introduction to BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, which shows that this takes place in the far future. The future of, well, the cutscene took place in the future of 2194, with the actual events of the game itself taking place roughly 5 years later, just short of the year 2200. Now, the events within the introduction were actually rather ominous and cryptic, with a clandestine experiment being conducted underground, until a rather ominous catastrophe occurred, a calamity which none of the scientists involved in said experiment could possibly have anticipated. Which brings us now to the present. We have a roster of 10 playable characters, each with their own unique stories and their own unique fighting styles. Now, something that I noticed in other Let's Plays of Calamity Trigger is that not too much focus was actually put on explaining the fighting style of BlazBlue in general, and that's something that I'm going to be doing throughout this LP. I know it's slow and tedious, but it actually helps to get an understanding of the nuts and bolts as to what made the BlazBlue series so dynamic in the first place. For a game that was released in 2009, it's pretty good a decade later. I can say that without any fear of contradiction wholeheartedly. Now, with the story of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, piecing together the story is actually going to be a very difficult challenge, because it is far from linear. Each character has multiple branching story paths, and that makes it very non-linear indeed. But I'm going to do my best to tackle the story of BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, and we begin with the story of Ragna the Bloodedge, who is not only one of the core main characters in Calamity Trigger, but also essentially the main protagonist of the entire BlazBlue series. So without further ado, let us play BlazBlue Calamity Trigger. Let's do this. And we begin with Ragna Stories, Grim Reaper. Very interesting moniker there for Ragna. The flames continue to rise. What remains of a tiny church is burning to the ground. And there's the unfortunate slowdown in effect. I apologize for that, but there is really nothing more I can do about that. Also, something you may be noticing by its absence is the fact that there is no music playing during these story sections. Again, another unfortunate quirk of the PC port. Again, nothing I can really do about that. Cradled in my arms, my little sister is barely breathing, and my little brother is standing, smiling before me. That's actually a rather macabre sight, given the fact that, well, a church is burning. Also the fact that the story of BlazBlue is narrated in visual novel form, very reminiscent of Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero. It struck without warning. I had no time to figure out what was going on. Yeah. Everything and everyone I care about is taken from me. Why? I don't understand. Why did this happen? What should I do? What can I do? What could I have done? The way I am now, I can do nothing. Reality finally sets in. The cold, harsh truth. I had taken my life for granted, and I am powerless to preserve it. Speaking of comparisons to Steins Gate, I'm getting a sudden feeling of deja vu here. That was when I learned to hate everything. Yeah, believe it or not, this is actually a flashback into the past of Ragna the Bloodedge, and, well, These events would ultimately shape the course of his present. Something else I should mention is the fact that you will probably be hearing the sound of either the buttons or the analog sticks of my controller. They are actually fairly loud.
Jeez, what a drag.
And it seems that we're jumping briefly back in time before the burning of the church. I'm lying on the soft grass of the field, gazing up at the sky. Dappled sunlight shines through the trees, casting a patchwork of shadows across the empty bucket sitting at the riverbank. It looks like Ragna was spending his morning fishing. Should I take a nap? I let my eyes drift shut, but a memory of those fiendish nuns floats in my head. Not a second passes before I open my eyes again. That was a very short nap there.
Can't believe they tried to time me the other day. Jeez, if they have that kind of time, why don't they try and get it themselves?
Seems like Ragnar is not on friendly terms with the people that run the church.
Speaking of which, he was pretty quiet today.
The boy's never satisfied, always giving me that I want to go with brother nonsense. But I haven't heard a peep out of him today. Is something bothering him, or is he finally starting to grow up? I hope that's the case. Our sister's been so sick lately. I haven't been spending as much time with him. That could ultimately prove to be bad in the long run. There, Ragnar.
Oh well, I guess I'll play with him when I get home.
With renewed vigor, I jump to my feet and grab my bucket. Violently swinging it through the river, I fill the pail with fresh water. Well, I guess I was wrong about him going fishing.
All right, time to head home.
Home again, diggity-tick. If only that were the case.
What the?
And so it begins.
Are you kidding me?
I toss the bucket aside and begin to run.
A fire?
Well, that certainly didn't take very long, did it? Now that brings us back to the present, of the past.
The church, it's... What happened? Is everyone...
Yeah, either there was an explosion at the church, which I can't honestly see how that would be possible, or I'm going to go out on a limb and say that someone deliberately set the church on fire. And hopefully we do something about it, because that fire is definitely going to spread through this rather lush field here. The church, burning to the ground, walls crumbling. Trying to suppress his emotions, he skims the area. He sees a person's shadow on the floor, his little sister. He desperately rushes to the slender body and holds her. Well, for some reason we've gone from first-person narration to third-person, which is kind of odd to be doing that midway through the story.
Hey, are you all right? Wake up!
Well, the fortunate thing is that she is still conscious, somewhat.
Thank God. You're alive. Damn it, where the hell are Jin and the old hag? Shit, what's going on? What the hell happened here?
Yeah. Something tells me that the caretaker of the church and her entourage, her fellow nuns, have met a rather gruesome end.
Ragna.
Is that Jin? I only see a silhouette. I can't see his face.
Jin, are you okay? What the hell happened?
Something tells me that Jin isn't in his right mind to listen to reason, Ragna. A sick smile escapes my brother's lips.
Huh? Ah!
That was a very gruesome sound. I don't know what's going on at first, but I notice something roll on the ground. My brother quietly smiles where he stands, rather morbidly at that. The thing that tumbled on the floor looks out of place. In fact, it looks a lot more like a cheap toy. Its image burns itself into my mind, but my head still can't figure out what it is. The answer slowly dawns on me. My right arm is gone. The sensation finally registering, unimaginable pain takes its place. But it isn't the only thing I feel. It's heat. It's hot. It's burning.
Ah! My arm! Ah!
Well, events have certainly taken a turn for the worse. Which is, yeah, don't really know what to say about that. And given the fact that Ragnar he might be a teenager at this point of his life, yeah, it's yeah, the story of Calamity Trigger is yeah.
Oh man, you seem to be in quite a bit of pain there, Raggy. Does it hurt? Does it? Of course it does.
And just where we thought things couldn't possibly be worse than they already are, things just got worse, because that voice, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that voice belongs to our mystery saboteur, or mystery arsonist, or something like that. The silhouette of a man slowly comes into view.
Whoa, you're bleeding all over the place. You gonna die? Bite the big one? Hey, think you're gonna die?
Yeah, I'm not liking this voice already.
Jin, take Saya and run.
I shove the pain aside, long enough to choke out what I think are my last words. Well, now we know what Ragnar's sister's name is.
It's all your fault, brother.
That's a very tall accusation there, Jin. I know that Ragnar didn't spend much time with you as he ought to have, but that's definitely no excuse to well, to accuse him of anything. And something actually tells me in your manner that you are somewhat complicit in what's just unfolded.
What the hell are you talking about? I wish I had more time to play with you, but I'm afraid I'm out of time. Damn, what a shame! Well, I don't suppose there's any harm in killing that old hag.
Well, now we know the unfortunate fate of the caretaker of the church.
Ah, wait! Damn you! Wait! Man, oh man! Don't tell me you're gonna kick the bucket already. Hey! Can you hear me?
I'm just going to come out and say that you're probably the most obnoxious sociopath I've ever heard in my life, whoever you are.
Oh well, I gotta be on my way. I'll need that little brat, though.
Could he be referring to Jin? Or Saya, perhaps?
Goodbye, brother.
Well, looks like we have our answer. It seems like our mystery assailant is taking Jin with him. Seems like he's found a new friend. You should, yeah, things are Yeah, things are definitely taking a turn for the worse, which is an understatement by this point. This is where my memories of that day end. I wake up to a thunderous downpour of rain. Well, at least there's a silver lining to this, is that the rain apparently has extinguished the fire.
Am I alive?
Well, given the fact that you're conscious enough to actually ask that question, I would certainly say yes. I try to lift my body up, but it feels like I've been nailed to the ground. So much for that. My shoulder feels like it's on fire where my arm used to be. Something deep down tells me the pain's just an illusion. I hate to break it to you, Ragna, but that pain is no illusion.
That's right. I lost my arm.
Although, it's amazing that you're still alive, considering probably how much blood you've certainly lost when your arm was severed. I still can't stand up. All I can do is stare at the ruins of the church.
That's...
Apparently, Ragnar spotted something. Sire's music box is sitting in the middle of the rubble.
Shit. Shit! Shit!
Well, whoever our mystery psychopath was, it seems like he wasn't just content with taking Jim with him, but he's also taken Sire too. It's gone. All of it. Everything important to me is taken by the flames, and a crazed sociopath. My body is useless. All I can do is scream. Also, by the way, we're suddenly back to, just noticed we're suddenly back to first person narration again. Somebody definitely screwed up in localization. So that's what I do, until I pass out again. And, here's the first save prompt, and whenever one of these appears, it always pays to save, because again, given how non-linear the story branches are, I'm going to be saving multiple times.
Damn it. Not this dream again. I wish they'd knock it off already.
And we finally join Ragnar in the present. There he is in his classic attire and regalia. A rather unique looking crimson jacket with a mane of spiky red hair and a rather unconventional giant sword strapped to his back. But the most telling detail is the fact that, yeah, Ragnar has a right arm. Well, we can obviously put two and two together and say that somewhere along his the rest of his life, he's managed to acquire a prosthetic of some sort. Exactly when and how he acquired it remains to be seen, but at least that more than makes up for it, at any rate. And also Ragnar appears to be in kind of like a strange sort of area. Behind him what appears to be, or rather above him I should say, what appears to be some sort of weird crane in the form of a what looks like a dinosaur head, really, in the upper left part of the screen. But believe it or not, I think this place is actually a some sort of train station. Although don't entirely quote me on that. At least I think it's a train station. I lift my right arm off my face and look at it. It moves just like I want it to. Shit. Seems Ragnar's actually not too pleased about the fact that his right hand is actually working properly. Wait, what the hell is she doing here? She?
You look pale, Ragna. A nightmare, perhaps?
Apparently this voice belongs to somebody named Rachel. And she appears to be, well, she's not wrong about that. I turn towards the voice. Before me stands a young girl, holding a strange umbrella. There are two ribbons holding her hair in place. They make her look like a...
What do you want, Rabbit?
Well, I was going to say much hair myself, but rabbit works fine. Also, that strange umbrella that Ragnar was observing happens to be in the form of a cat. And yes, your eyes are not deceiving you. That cat umbrella is in fact blinking. And there also appears to be a weird-looking creature resembling a bat next to Rachel's left arm.
You were groaning in your sleep, so I took pity and woke you. Ungrateful beast.
Yeah, Rachel has only really one temperament, and that is snarky sarcasm. Although Ragnar has also one main character temperament as well, which is gruff unsocialism or whatever. You know, couldn't really find the right word there, but anyway.
Yeah. You should be thankful the princess is even wasting her time on a man like you.
You're not losing your sanity, adventurers. That cat did just talk.
You're in her debt!
As well as the bat creature. The cat is Nago and the bat is Gi.
Ow! That hurt!
And it seems that another one of Rachel's pastimes apparently seems abusing Nago and Gi on a regular basis. I don't know if those two things are her friends or her servants, but what I do know is that they're going to piss me off if they don't get the hell out of here. I wouldn't necessarily call them her friends. They're, I believe familiars is probably the more accurate term.
A rare beast. How strangely appropriate. You sleep where others fear to tread, and you are always very, very entertaining. How perfect.
Not really sure how Rachel and Ragnar are acquainted, but something tells me that we're going to find out later on at some point.
Shut the hell up! You're more like a rare beast than I'll ever be, vampire.
And believe it or not, Rachel is in fact a vampire, which finally allow me to introduce her properly, because she is none other than Rachel Alucard. And believe it or not, she is aristocratic royalty. And for those of you who have never heard of Son of Dracula, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or Hellsing Ultimate Abridged, Alucard, spelled backwards, is Dracula.
What the?
But unlike most conventional vampires, Rachel is rather unique. Because, believe it or not, it is actually morning, yet Rachel, being a vampire, is not affected, despite being a vampire, is not affected by the UV rays of the sun in any way, shape, or form, which probably hints as to just how powerful she is. And speaking of powerful, that was a bolt of lightning that she just unleashed on Ragnar there.
What a cocky little creature you are. Which reminds me, you have a rather handsome bounty on your head, don't you? I wonder how much you're worth right now.
Yeah. Ragnar does indeed have a price on his head, and The reason being is that he's been designated as an SS-class criminal by an organization calling itself the Novus Orbis Librarium, colloquially known in BlazBlue as the Library, or the NOL for short. Oh, sorry, the NOL, if I didn't speak clearly the first time. Basically what the NOL is they're a global spanning organization in BlazBlue. They essentially function as a world government or world order or something like that, although people are loath to actually describe them as such, especially in areas that are controlled by the NOL themselves.
Hey, that isn't funny, Rabbit.
Ragna is clearly unamused by Rachel's lightning antics there.
Your Highness! This dog's barking something!
I know you're a cat, Nago, but did you really have to call Ragna a dog there? What are you, Seto
The
Kaiba?
weaker they are, the louder they bark.
I guess so, apparently. Getting Seto Kaiba Joe Wheeler vibes here.
Shut up, you're nothing but stuffed toys.
Although, Ragna clearly doesn't have a Brooklyn accent, obviously.
If these simpletons can rouse you to anger, you still have much to learn.
Oh, that does it. Now I'm really pissed. I'm gonna make you regret this, Rachel.
Seems like Ragna's itching for a scrap of
Oh,
sorts.
please, do try. I would like that very much.
To which Rachel seems only too happy to oblige. And so we finally get our first bout of combat. Ragna the Bloodedge versus Rachel Alucard. Let's do this.
The wheel of fate is turning.
And there is some more of that unfortunate slowdown there.
One. Action!
Now, I'm going to pause the screen and do some more elaborating. First things first, rounds in the BlazBlue universe are often referred to as rebels for some reason. Why a round of combat is known as a rebel, I couldn't even begin to tell you. Second of all is the music. Each character has his or her own special stage theme, but there are some unique stage themes that play when two people fight each other. Case in point, the theme that you're hearing right now is known as White Requiem, which is the theme when Rachel and Ragna are fighting a battle. And the music in BlazBlue is very, very fun to listen to. It's one of my favorite arcade fighting soundtracks. But first and foremost, I'm going to finally get into the actual means of fighting in Calamity Trigger. Now, BlazBlue uses 4 buttons, A, B, C, and D. A is a weak attack, B is a mid-ranged attack, C is a strong attack, and D being a drive attack, and each character has his or her own unique drive. In the case of Ragna the Bloodedge, his drive attack is Soul Eater, an attack that absorbs the opponent's life, which is pretty convenient. He can actually replenish his health by dealing damage with his drive attack. And another thing to note about BlazBlue's combat style is the fact that it is very chain-oriented. And a clear example being Held's Fang, a lunging attack that moves forward. And if you follow with an additional attack, it does a chain attack that also replenishes health. And then you have Inferno Divider, which deals anti-air, obviously, but you'll notice that there is a special symbol next to it called SB1. That is a rather unique thing to Calamity Trigger. You can see the button input there under the name Inferno for Inferno Divider, but well, in the case that you're not very if you're a new player, or if you've been, or if your hand has started to cramp up after playing for 5 minutes, you can actually press the, or in my case, up on the right analog stick, and that's basically another means of using Inferno Divider. And of course, going with the chain attacks, Ragna can do uppercuts, rated punch, and an axe kick as well. Then you've got unique attacks like Gauntlet Hades, which is a pretty fun attack. Dead Spike, short range projectile that also replenishes health. Not over yet, which you can kick an opponent when they're down. And then we come to something rather unique with BlazBlue. You have two types of special attacks. The first being distortion drives, which are quite powerful attacks. You got Carnage Scissors, which you can read the prompt down below that you can see there. You've got Blood Cane, which isn't really an attack as such. It's more of a buff that actually increases the damage of Ragna's strength. The drawback of which is he will slowly lose health as long as Blood Cane is active, as the prompt clearly says. And then next is Devoured by Darkness, which can only be used when Blood Cane is active. And finally, the cream of the crop, the filet mignon, if you will, the Astral Heat attack, which in Ragna's case is Black Onslaught. Astral Heats are unique in that they have to be used if a battle is in the final round and the opponent's life is below 20% health. Yeah. It's rather a tall prerequisite, but it is definitely worth it. And moving on to Rachel Alucard, her drive is called Sylphid, which allows wind to actually move her about, and she actually has a special gauge which decreases every time you use her drive attack. I'm just going to call it the Rose gauge for the sake of simplicity. And her attack, she actually has not that many attacks. You've got Tiny Lobelia, which basically sends lightning rods, which is very annoying. George the 13th, the familiar that in the form of a frog that can also electrocute you. Impus Gifficilia, which is a pumpkin, as it says below, that changed very well with the Sylphid drive. If Rachel uses Sword Iris, it basically draws lightning to any lightning rods that are already out in the battlefield. Fortunately, Rachel can only summon about 3 or 4 lightning rods, but if you're standing next to them, and if you happen to be in the path of George the 13th, I almost said George the 3rd there, George the 13th, it's quite overwhelming. Rachel's distortion drive is Baden Lily, another lightning attack which is even more devastating than Sword Iris. And then finally you have her Astral Heat, which is Clownish Calendula. Truly devastating attack indeed. But you've heard me ramble on long enough, so it's time to actually... Oh! And there's George. Get away! Get away! And Rachel can actually use Nago as a... for her attacks, and going to try and hit her with Inferno Divider. try and build up my heat gauge, which is the only way I can use special attacks. But you'll notice that there is a barrier gauge as well. That there's me using the barrier there, and I actually managed to counter one of Rachel's attacks. Get back here. Yeah, if we toy around with Rachel too long, that could actually you recovered swiftly there. Oh, I jumped right into Nago when he was being electrocuted. That's not good. Quick recovery. There's Sylphid. Oh, and there's the lightning rod. Here's the lightning rod. Don't want to be standing next to that when Rachel unleashes Sword Iris. Now, I missed there. Of course, Sword Iris doesn't do anything when,
George the 13th.
Oh, stay away from me, George. Don't you come near me. Don't you come near me, George. I'm not in the mood for your shenanigans. Oh. Get away there. I don't think I'm going to use my distortion drive. I'm just going to try and finish off Rachel as quickly as possible. And I'll just finish her off with some conventional swordplay. Because I keep using Inferno Divider and Gauntlet Hades a lot. But that was the first battle, and things could have actually been a lot worse.
You better hope I never see you butting into human affairs again.
Yeah, if you're not careful, Rachel's lightning attacks can actually be devastating to your health.
Words cannot describe my fear.
And even with Ragna's soul ability, Rachel has the ability to take down your health far quicker than you can replenish it, which is truly unfortunate. But we won this time, so that's all that matters.
Losing your temper like a little kid. You need to grow up, boy.
And again, Nago and Guy with the insults.
You guys lost, so why are you even talking?
Yeah, even though this was a victory for us, Rachel doesn't seem perturbed in the slightest, given her expression.
Madam Rachel?
Oh, Valkenheim. Are you here to collect the bounty on this creature?
What the hell? It looked like someone sliced open the air, and some old fart in a tux just appeared out of nowhere. Doesn't seem interested in me, though. Just that damn rabbit. Yeah, Ragnar certainly has a blunt view of the world when it comes to observing his surroundings, but the man who just appeared is none other than Valkenheim R. Helsing, personal butler and manservant to the Alucard household, which of course his surname is a reference to the vampire hunter Abraham Van Helsing from Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Of course not, madam. I only wish to humbly inform you that breakfast awaits your ladyship in the dining hall.
Very convenient time to make that announcement there, Valkenheim.
Goodness. Breakfast time already.
And it seems like Rachel has already forgotten that Ragnar is even there.
I would also humbly suggest that you avoid men of the lower classes, such as that filthy creature there. Madam must consider her station.
Aristocrats. They always live in a completely different world from the rest of society, I suppose.
The hell'd you say?
Of course, that's definitely going to get on Ragnar's nerves.
Go home, kid. The hour is late.
Didn't you just say it was breakfast 5 seconds ago? And by the way, it's morning. He sure didn't seem scared of the rabbit, but that glare he threw my way wasn't real friendly. Also, Naga was glaring at Ragnar as well.
That's right.
I'd take his advice if I were you. Princess, that hurts.
What was that for?
And again, Rachel absent-mindedly abusing Nago and Guy for her own amusement.
Valkenheim, what have you prepared for my breakfast?
I was able to secure a delectable piscine specimen today, which I have taken the liberty of crafting into a polel dish. I have also prepared you a vibrant potage, which will be accompanied by your drink.
I despise tomato juice.
Yeah, just remembering the fact that Rachel is a vampire, which means that despite being as powerful as she is, she still requires blood in order to maintain her immortality.
I am well aware of that, madam.
Well, good. Nago, Guy, it's high time we left.
It's about damn time. Go home and never come back.
Oh, but I did enjoy myself a small bit. Shall we meet again sometime, Mr. Grim Reaper?
Yeah, Ragnar definitely doesn't want to be anywhere near Rachel as long as he can help it. Although Rachel seems to have other ideas.
I think you have done quite enough, child. Your births have already placed you worlds apart. I would advise you to maintain the distance.
Yeah, I know you already mentioned that to Rachel, but I don't think that she is actually going to take that advice to heart. So they just come here to give me crap and then book it. Screw that. Where the hell did they go anyway? I don't think I could have followed him if I wanted to.
What the hell is this guy talking about? Seriously, what a huge waste of time.
Nobody here to listen to my bitchin'. Just get swallowed up by the darkness. Once again, reminder, it's morning.
I don't like this one bit.
Still, I guess that fight did give me a chance to blow off a little steam. If only a little.
God damn it!
Whatever. Being pissed ain't gonna help me right now. Just gotta keep moving. As the fog lifts, I can see my destination in the distance.
So that's the 13th hierarchical city. Kagutsuchi, huh?
It appears to be where Ragnar is headed. Oh, should go without saying that the hierarchical cities are in fact the provinces of the NOL, given the fact that they are the ones that constructed them in the first place. It's actually quite an elaborate looking city, especially considering the fact that it's been built into a mountain range. And there is actually a reason for this, because yeah, the hierarchical cities of the NOL have been built into mountain ranges all around the globe for a very specific reason. There is actually some sort of substance known as Sether that you actually recall was mentioned in the introduction cinematic. We don't exactly know what Sether itself is, but we do know that A, there is a lot of it covering the globe, and B, it is completely detrimental to human health. Fortunately, it seems to accumulate on the lower parts of the world, so that's actually the reason why the hierarchical cities are built the way that they are. But it looks like Ragnar has some business to attend to in Kagutsuchi. And it's definitely a good idea to save again. So I'm going to do that. I've never been to this one before, but the hierarchical cities are all built pretty much the same. I don't think I'll have much trouble finding my way around. And if we get rid of the menu, the message prompt there, we can actually see our surroundings. Looks like Ragnar's taking the scenic route by going through the foundation of Kagutsuchi to avoid any sort of NOL entanglements. That being said, this place definitely seems like it's seen better days. It's dank and it looks more than a little worse for wear. But With that said, I believe now is a good time to end this particular episode of Let's Play BlazBlue Calamity Trigger. And when we return, we shall press on and hopefully reach wherever it is that Ragna the Bloodedge is trying to get to. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.